Nouman Raja, a former Florida police officer, found himself at the center of a national controversy after he fatally shot Corey Jones, a black musician who was stranded on the side of the road waiting for help. Raja, in plain clothes and driving an unmarked van, approached Jones without identifying himself as a police officer, leading to a fatal encounter. The courtroom was packed during Raja's trial, with Jones's family and friends looking on, many wearing t-shirts with his face on them, as a show of solidarity. The prosecution's case was built around the fact that Raja didn't identify himself and escalated the situation unnecessarily. Raja claimed that he feared for his life when he saw Jones's gun, but the prosecution pointed out that Jones was running away when he was shot. The trial was emotionally charged, with both sides presenting their arguments passionately. The most powerful testimony came from the prosecution's witnesses, who described how Raja had multiple opportunities to de-escalate the situation but chose to use deadly force instead. The prosecution also showed Raja's inconsistent statements during the investigation, further damaging his credibility. When the verdict was read, Raja was found guilty of manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder. The judge, before sentencing Raja to 25 years in prison, spoke directly to the former officer. "This case has been heartbreaking for everyone involved, but justice demands accountability. Your actions were reckless and resulted in the loss of a life." As Raja was let out of the courtroom, there was a sense of closure for Jones's grieving family. Justice had been served, but the loss of Corey Jones would be felt forever. David Oliver thought he could get away with stealing from charities and pocketing the proceeds. But when his crimes were exposed, he found himself on the other side of the law, facing charges that would end his career in disgrace. In court, Oliver tried to play the victim, claiming that his colleagues were conspiring against him, but the prosecution wasn't having it. They presented a detailed account of how Oliver had stolen money meant for charity and took weapons from evidence lockers, some of which he sold for personal gain. Oliver's behavior in the courtroom didn't help his case. He frequently interrupted the proceedings and made excuses for his actions, even accusing his former colleagues of ganging up on him. But the judge wasn't impressed. "You've become the very thing you once sought to put behind bars," the judge remarked before sentencing Oliver to 2 years of probation, along with a hefty fine and an order to pay restitution to the charities he'd stolen from. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when Officer Crystal Casterline, a patrol officer who had accused Oliver of harassment, took the stand. She described how Oliver had made her life miserable for years, using his power to intimidate and harass her. As she spoke, Oliver dramatically shook his head and made faces, but the judge wasn't buying his act. "You've become the very mope you wrote about in your book," the judge said, referencing Oliver's own words from his time as chief. Oliver was ordered to surrender his police certificate, effectively ending his career in law enforcement. As Oliver was let out of the courtroom, there was a sense of justice being served. He'd abused his power for far too long, and now he was finally facing the consequences. Todd Pate had already been arrested for DUI and reckless driving before, but that didn't seem to teach him a lesson. In 2019, he was involved in a hit-and-run while driving drunk, and things quickly went downhill from there. Pate's courtroom behavior was nothing short of arrogant. During his trial, he spent more time on his phone than paying attention to the judge, who wasn't impressed by his behavior. When the judge noticed, she immediately ordered him to put it away, setting the tone for what would be a tense and frustrating trial. Instead of pleading guilty as expected, Pate began questioning the judge and making excuses for his actions. The prosecutor, clearly exasperated by Pate's antics, made it clear that his repeated offenses and lack of remorse were aggravating factors in the case. The judge, too, was visibly frustrated by Pate's refusal to take responsibility for his actions. After much back and forth, Pate finally agreed to plead guilty. But by then, the judge's patience had run out. "Your arrogance in this courtroom has only served to reinforce the need for you to be held accountable," she stated, before sentencing Pate to 75 days in jail. As Pate was led away, there was a sense that justice had finally caught up with him. The once proud sheriff, who'd been featured on national television for his exemplary police work, was now just another criminal facing the consequences of his actions. His repeated offenses, lack of remorse, and arrogant behavior in court only served to show the deep-seated issues that had plagued his tenure as sheriff. Michael Slager, a former North Charleston, South Carolina police officer, was convicted of shooting an unarmed black man, Walter Scott, in the back as he ran away. The incident, which was caught on video by a bystander, sparked nationwide outrage and was a key moment in the Black Lives Matter movement. The courtroom was tense during Slager's trial, with the prosecution focusing on the video evidence that clearly showed Slager shooting Scott in the back as he attempted to flee. The defense tried to argue that Slager had felt threatened during the altercation, but the video, which showed Scott running away, contradicted those claims. One of the most powerful moments of the trial came when the prosecution played the video in slow motion, highlighting the exact moment Slager fired the fatal shots. The courtroom was silent as the footage played, with many in the gallery visibly moved by what they saw. Slager took the stand in his own defense, attempting to explain his actions. He claimed that he feared for his life and that Scott had tried to grab his taser during the struggle. But under cross-examination, the prosecution was able to poke holes in Slager's story, particularly when it came to his decision to fire multiple shots at a fleeing suspect. The jury found Slager guilty of second-degree murder and obstruction of justice for attempting to cover up the incident by tampering with evidence and lying in his police report. During the sentencing, the judge addressed the gravity of the case. "You took a man's life in a way that shocks the conscience. The trust between law enforcement and the community has been severely damaged by your actions, and you must be held accountable." Slager was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a sentence that many felt was too lenient given the circumstances, but it did bring some measure of justice for Walter Scott's family. Michael Daughtreau's crime was as heinous as it was shocking. He set fire to his supervisor's home in an act of revenge. The fire, started in the early hours of the morning, could have killed the entire family inside, including 2 children and a 92-year-old woman. Daughtreau's trial was a chilling reminder of how far some people will go to settle a score. The prosecution laid out the evidence in painstaking detail, showing how Daughtreau had carefully planned and executed the arson. The court heard how Daughtreau had used 2 gasoline-filled jugs to ignite the fire, which quickly engulfed the house. In the courtroom, Daughtreau remained stone-faced, showing no emotion as the prosecution detailed the extent of his crime. But the judge had plenty to say. Because of what this individual has done, victims are afraid to come forward to be part of the criminal justice system, the judge remarked, showing the broader impact of his actions on public trust. The victims of Daughtreau's crime, his supervisor and his family, were present in the courtroom. They described the terror of waking up to a house on fire and the lasting trauma it had caused. Daughtreau's lack of remorse during the trial was noted by the judge, who pointed out that Daughtreau had shown no signs of regret for endangering the lives of his supervisor's family. Daughtreau was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted murder and aggravated arson, among other charges. The judge's final words to Daughtreau were sharp. "You used your position of authority to intimidate and harm those who trusted you. The law demands that you be held accountable for your actions, and this sentence reflects the severity of your crime." And there you have it, some cases of corrupt cops who thought they were untouchable, but found themselves facing the full force of justice in the courtroom. Each of these stories serves as a stark reminder that no one is above the law, not even those who are sworn to uphold it. From predators to revenge-driven arsonists, these officers abuse their power in the most egregious ways possible. But in the end, they all face the same fate: accountability for their actions. If these cases shocked you, be sure to check out our other videos where we dive deep into the world of crime, corruption, and courtroom drama. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that uncovers the truth behind the headlines. Remember, justice may be delayed, but it is never denied. Like and subscribe to keep up with the latest courtroom moments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.